Hi,
This meeting is being
Evan.
recorded.
I can't hear.
Hola, Raquel.
Get it.
Hey, Paul, and everybody else.
Good morning, Jenna.
Hi, Zadie. Good morning.
Hey,
Morning,
Evan.
Who's there, Evan?
Yeah. and
Oh, Evan.
Jenna.
You look like my cousin in Colorado. Are you her aunt?
Mhm.
Carol's cousin. My cousin Carol herself.
You know Evan was on it.
Who?
Evan. I
Well,
know.
he's on there.
I said I didn't know he was on this.
Right here.
With Barry. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's
Oh,
not.
okay.
I'm here.
There he is.
Hi, Evan.
Hey, Henrietta, how are you?
Okay, how are you?
Doing great.
Good, good. Say hello to Michelle.
I will.
Okay.
Hi, Joey. Hi, Joey. Hi, Rita.
Yep.
Hello,
Hi,
Paul.
Benjamin, are you in Spain?
No, yo estoy en California.
You're in California?
Yeah, in Napa now.
Oh,
But my
Napa
home is in
Valley.
Hayward.
Oh, I'm in Redwood City.
Oh, I am very often in there at Stanford.
Fantastic. Well, we should touch base someday.
Yes, of course. What's your name?
Alan Geller, Geller.
I'm Geller. Okay. Good.
So I'm the grandson of the youngest brother, Nathan Libert.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I lived in the Bay Area for many years.
Me too. I was
Yeah.
I was in the Air Force in Central California. I originally grew up in New Jersey,
Right.
and then after I got out of the military, I spent most of my career in Silicon Valley in the computer business.
Yeah. I am a physician and I was in practice in Northern California.
Oh, no, he's Uruguay.
Fantastic.
Well,
I used to ride my bike with a bunch of Stanford teaching doctors.
I rode also my bike from Hayward to Stanford once a week. Yeah. And I went up to Skyline Boulevard, and sometimes I went down to the coast with my bike.
Well, we went to a bar up in the mountains behind Stanford and
Oh.
drank beer for a half hour.
No, I don't drink too much, but
Well,
I
when do you want to get started?
Well, it is just a little bit after 1 o'clock. We're expecting quite a few more people. So why don't we give it another? Danny, did you ask the question?
No, it was me. I have some obligations later in the day, so I was just curious to
Or
know.
should we wait another 2-3 minutes? And then
Sure.
Just 2 or 3 minutes. I see Alex is now logged on as well, so we're okay.
Yes, Alex is here from Berlin, and the Canadians are coming in. Peggy is here.
I'm here.
Hi, Peggy.
And Karen, who is not really a, Karen, where do you live?
Where do I live?
Yeah,
Teaneck, but I'm not in Teaneck right now, New Jersey.
and Ingrid is here. Ingrid, you're a Canadian, right? Okay,
Yes, I am. Born and raised. Proud Canadian.
That's my baby.
Good.
we're all going to be joining you shortly.
Please come. I'm happy to host you guys.
Ready?
During the 60s, we always said Canada may be cold, but it's not drafty.
Very good.
Really not.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hola, Raquel, no te vi a ti. ¿Por qué no hablas? Raquel.
Okay, so I think we can get started. Yes.
Mute everybody.
Bueno, hola a todos.
Hola.
Hola, desde Montevideo con mucho frío. mucho frío, es un invierno fuerte. Y bueno, los veo a todos ustedes muy acalorados y me encanta.
Okay.
Oh, sí.
Paul, when you begin, everyone should be muted.
Okay. So Patricia, who is my wife and my technical advisor, is here, and I think Patricia is going to mute everybody. Usually she mutes me. She doesn't do it by any kind of technological device. Okay, so let's get started. And I want to greet the Lubartowski Nation that is here and welcome everybody to another family event. So today, we're going to meet two cousins from Paterson, New Jersey, David Libert and Alex Berzin. Patricia, can you highlight David and Alex? I want to make sure that everybody understands that David's last name is pronounced Libert, not Lubert, Libert, or Libart. All right. What a handsome face there is for Alex. Okay, so David and Alex have led have had very different life journeys. David lived the life of a rock musician, music industry executive, and now he's a protector of animals. Alex became a Tibetan Buddhist. How did that happen? Good Jewish boy. Became the confidant of the Dalai Lama and a respected teacher. We are, of course, did anybody hear anything that I said? Okay, all right. So Patricia, why don't you put the spotlight on Danny, because he likes it. Danny, of course, will, through his probing questions, elicit revealing insights on David's and Alex's exceptionally fascinating life stories. After the interviews, we'll open the session for questions. As has become traditional in our get-togethers, Clifford Gold, the keeper of a family tree, will give us an update. Patricia, highlight Clifford, please. I know he's shy, but
Yes, I'm very shy.
we want to see him. Have you found Clifford yet? And Clifford is going to give us an update on the family tree, and he will introduce two recently discovered cousins who have been hiding from us. Janice Kraft and Alan Geller, who represent a brand new branch of our tree. So Cliff, tell us about where the family tree is. Tell us how you encountered Janice and Alan, and how do they fit into our tree?
Well, that's a really good question. Thanks, Paul. And let me just get started, take a little step back and just give an overview of the tree before I get into that. First of all, it's wonderful to see everybody. I hope everybody's having a great summer so far. Excuse me, just to give everybody a quick update on our family tree, we're now sitting at a total of 1,014 descendants, including spouses of Yankel and Sura Lubartowski. Just wow, that is incredible. The amount of work and energy that's been put into this has been amazing. Some of the recent discoveries, we'll get to the one that Paul just referred to, but Michael Tiger recently made contact with a previously unknown to him second cousin. His name is Shelby Novick from Palm Beach, Florida, but originally from New York. Shelby is the grandson of Yetta Lubartowski, who was one of Sprince's younger sisters. And I think my Auntie Anna would have a wonderful story about Shelby's sister that she could tell a little bit later. From Shelby's info, we were able to add 9 more people to the tree. Michael and I had a really great conversation with him over Zoom. Sharon Stern's niece, Sarah, got married on May 27th to Brian Jimenez in Washington. Mazel tov to you, Sharon. And we've added Brian to this to the tree. Any day now, we'll also be adding a brand new name to the tree. Zachary Noah Gold. My brother Brad and his wife Anna are expecting their second child anytime now. Yes, my brother. Let's just say he got off to a little bit of a late start. Zachary will be another direct 5 times great-grandchild of Yankel and Sura. Now, I'd like to also welcome the 2 new people to the Zoom call. Janice Kraft from Los Angeles and her first cousin, Alan Geller from Emerald Hills, California, which is in the Bay Area. Both Janice and Alan are descendants of the Lubartowski clan, but we have no idea how or where they fit into the mix. This clan descends from Wigro, Poland, which is about 80 miles northeast of Amsterdam, Girardov, and Grocek in that area. Their grandfather was Nathan Luber, L-U-B-E-R. What do you know? Another derivative of the name. We've been doing a lot of speculation about how this family connects to ours, and there's a lot of plausible theories, but there's no concrete evidence yet. The most prevailing theory is that this family may be related to an unknown brother of Yankel. And if that's the case, this opens up a new bunch of questions. Where did the family originate? Was it Grocek or was it Wigro? We know by the name that it must have been Lubartow at one point. And when did one side of the family move away and where did they move to? If this theory is true and we can find some documentation, this could possibly double the amount of people in our tree. Think about it. If we have 1,000 listed names descending from Yankel, why wouldn't a brother be any less? So still lots of work to do on this one. Welcome, Janice, and welcome, Alan. We're looking forward to getting to know you. Just a few reminders. The 1950 United States Census has been released on Ancestry, and there's a ton of information there if anybody is interested and if you have an account. Unfortunately, Canada has a little way to go to catch up. The latest census info available in Canada is only from 1921. The release date of the 1931 census won't be until sometime next year. Canada has a 92 waiting period before this information can be released. Just a reminder that if you have any family life cycle events that you want to share with us, just drop us an email and the information will add it into the tree. Again, welcome everybody, and it's so great to see you. And back to you, Paul.
Yeah, Cliff, can you just clarify the role of Ancestry.com and how you and Janice connected?
Well, we didn't connect through Ancestry. Janice reached out to me on Jewish Gen, and we connected and discovered that we have a very small DNA connection. Now, the DNA connection could be just noise, or it could mean that we are related, but not necessarily through a Lubartowski. It could be somewhere else. There's no real connection because it's so small. That would suggest that it's way, way, way up there. We started chatting a little bit, finding out a little bit more about each other and how we've connected, and then we introduced the group, and that's when the speculation started.
Okay, well, this is really fascinating. Okay, so thank you, Cliff. And Danny, can you take over from here? Danny, you need to unmute. Unmute. Patricia, unmute Danny.
Okay. Hello?
Okay.
You're good now, Danny.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's lovely to see everybody again. Thanks, Cliff, for that update. And thank you, Paul, for once again hosting all of us and keeping us going forward. I think Patricia can remove the spotlights on the 2 of them, so we'll be able to focus on our 2 interviewees today on the main screen. by way of proceeding, we've suggested that a couple of first cousins of these two gentlemen actually do a short introduction to each of their cousins as they knew them. So I'm going to start by asking Glenn Goodnow, who's my actual first cousin once removed, to introduce his uncle, who is Alex Berzin. Glenn, can you say a few words by way of introduction?
Sure. I'm happy to introduce my uncle Alex. Although technically my uncle Alex, who was only 12 years older than me, has been something of an older brother I never actually had. A bar mitzvah boy, he went off to college at age 16 when I was only 4 or 5. And so he was not a constant physical presence in my life, but he always loomed large. And as he came back from his various travels around the world, he made sure that both me and my brother Gary were aware that there was indeed life beyond the bedroom communities of northern New Jersey. When I was 12, Alex turned me on to the Beatles' White Album, The Hobbit, and Be Here Now. He would later take me to Europe in '72, on one of his early trips back to India, which really opened my eyes to the world. He would, of course, spend the next 29 years living and working with the Tibetans in northern India. Alex's rather single-minded mission in life developed into bringing authentic Tibetan Buddhism to the West, with the explicit blessing and guidance of the Dalai Lama, influencing in a positive way thousands of Westerners seeking a spiritual path that ran to the East for over 50 years, including, for some reason that perhaps will be later explored, an unusually large number of Jews. He's a giant in his field, and we're lucky to have him as part of the family. Danny?
Thank you, Glenn. Also lovely to see you. I don't see you
Lovely to
often
see you
enough.
too.
Phil Schneerson, again, one of my Paterson Sprooker, but a third cousin for me, is going to introduce David. Phil?
Am I now unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can't say that David followed the same path as the person that was just introduced. David was a musician from pretty much the time he was born. I have a picture in my mind at a camp in Northern California called Waukegan of David at about 9, sitting at the piano and playing complete songs after he heard them. His father, Louis, and my mother, Adele, were brother and sister. There was a third brother, Sid, and we really didn't know that there were so many related people in Paterson. There were Luberts, there were Liberts, and even though we were aware that there were some cousins, we just had no idea, because our little group, including his father, my mother, and the other brother, were close. The matriarch, in other words, David Libert, our grandfather's wife, died when my mother was 10, which would have been in 1925. And the family did not keep together. They had migrated from Lodz. He was in the shmata business. He basically was a cutter. I remember him cutting patterns in our cellar. But David's older brother, Richard, and myself were very close in age. My younger brother, whose name is also David, was closer to David in age. David clearly was a musician from the time he came out of the womb. By the time we were in high school, it was sort of the doo-wop era, and David and 3 other members, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, formed kind of a corner street doo-wop singing close harmony. And before long, he became extreme. The 4 of them, known as the Happenings, had several gold records. And that was wonderful. Richard and I went on to college. My brother did not. He went into the military. And David went to make gold records. And he will tell you, and it's the basis of his book, that there are highs and lows in the entertainment industry. He hit some very high highs and very low lows, but clearly, when I read his book, I recognized an awful lot. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So again, let me say that it was quite different from the other person who was introduced, Mr. Berzin. I don't think David ever saw the Dalai Lama, but he may have if he played for him, for sure. He always was entertaining. He still is entertaining. And I think you should read his book because that's entertaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. That's a wonderful introduction. David has shown the book before. This is it. Again, I'm not quite sure how we can get it so that it's unreversed on the image, but it is again available, and we'll talk a little bit again. David will remind people later how they can order it or pre-order it shortly from Amazon, but they can go to rockandrollwarrior.com, I gather at this point, and probably also do a pre-order. But we also have quite a wonderful slideshow for both Alex and David that we're going to share with you, and I'm going to ask them each to talk us through it when we get to that. But I thought I would begin with asking them to talk a little bit about the shared history that they both had, though didn't seem to know very much about, and that is that they both grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, and spent their misgotten youth in Paterson, New Jersey, both of them. As did I. I'm quite close to Alex. Alex and I shared quite a bit, and you'll see one bit of that later in one of the slides. So I know Alex quite well, and I know what Phil spoke of, that the two families that basically had very little contact, and we knew very little of each other, if anything at all. But they both David and Alex went to Eastside High School in Paterson and grew up in Paterson. So I thought it would be helpful just to begin with kind of a conversation between the two of them a little bit, in which they each talk a little bit about what it was like for each of them to grow up in Paterson, New Jersey. What role do you think Paterson and Alex, I know, was bar mitzvah. I don't remember in David's story, but Alex, could you talk a little bit about your life in Paterson, New Jersey, before you left for graduate school, because you actually went to college in New Jersey as well, and then I'll ask David to speak as well about that period, and then we'll go to the slideshow for each of you to let you talk about your lives more fully. Alex?
Well, there was nothing terribly extraordinary about my life in Paterson. It was, just a regular young boy growing up, going to grammar school, playing in the playground of the school, that type of thing. But I was always mostly interested in reading and learning. I loved school. I loved learning as much as I could. I got the nickname of professor when I was, very, very young, since I had the terrible habit of correcting my teachers, but which did not enamor me to the other students. But anyway, my sense of humor always saved me. Went on to high school. I, before that, I went to Hebrew school. I started Hebrew school quite late, but I think I was about 10 or 11 years old, but I caught up very, very quickly. And I had already gone to I forget what its name was, the Labor Free School or something like that, a Yiddish school.
It was a kind of a Shalom Aleichem school that our aunts and uncles actually organized. I think my father and Aunt Belle.
Right. So I went there and had studied the Hebrew alphabet and a bit of Yiddish and Yiddishkeit there before I went to Hebrew school. So anyway, I was bar mitzvahed and actually never went back after that. But anyway.
You were the only one of the cousins to actually be bar mitzvah, I think, actually, on our side, not necessarily the Berzin side.
Alan was bar mitzvah.
Was Alan.
Yeah, but in any case, it was a good experience. Then I went on to high school. High school, again, I did extremely well. Nothing really extraordinary about that.
You did have a connection to the YMHA.
Yes. I went to the Jewish Y. My father was quite involved with that. We went every Sunday mornings to the swim. He loved the schwitz. I liked playing in the pool and swimming there with other kids. I went to the day camp from, I guess it's from the Y.
It is
the
Camp Veridens.
Camp Veridens for a few years, and then went to the Jewish Y overnight camp, the New Jersey Y overnight camp in the Poconos for a number of years. At the Y, I also went to various tween and teen groups. Also participated with you, Danny, in the little theater group there, and nothing terribly out of the ordinary in a young Jewish person's growing up in Paterson.
Well, it's hard to know what is ordinary and what isn't. And if we go to David, we'll see as in fact, his life may have been ordinary as well, but it was also quite extraordinary in very different ways. So David, why don't you talk a little bit about Europe, bringing your background?
Well, I too grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, and also went to Eastside High. I didn't excel as well as Alex apparently did, and I was more interested in having fun than studying, and I think that has an effect on my life, and that I was more interested in hanging out. And there was a coffee shop on the same street as Eastside High School called the Cozy. I don't know whether Alex remembers that or not, but that was like the center of my universe. But like Alex, I used to go to the YMHA. I used to enjoy that. It was a very sociable thing, but my grades were so appalling that my mother decided to pull me out of Eastside High and send me to some private school, Morristown Prep, to see if they could teach me how to study, which they did. My grades improved dramatically, and though I hated every moment being there, it did teach me how to study, and allayed my mother's fear that maybe there was something really wrong with me, that I couldn't seem to excel prior to me going to that school. And then, but I spent a great deal of time hanging out with friends, mostly in the parking lot of a restaurant called the Bonfire. And that's basically where I met the other happenings. And we eventually formed a band, and by some incredible luck, and we were able to have a few hit records. And it sort of was the foundation of me being able to have a career in the music industry.
Well, what's clear to me is that you're both extraordinarily talented individuals, but your talents are quite different, but they nonetheless led to quite remarkable careers. David, when we show your slides, they're going to begin with what may be a surprise actually to Cliff Gold, a bit of an overlap with Alex's career a little bit. So I'm going to start with Alex's, and then that little bit of overlap will be the surprise beginning to the slideshow we have for you to talk through. So Alex, we're going to have this slideshow run, but I want you to take the time to basically narrate each of these slides, much as you did in the email that you had sent, and talk them through, a couple of minutes or a minute or whatever about each slide as we go through them. Okay.
Okay.
Here we go.
That's me at 4 years old. I think you could see from this why I was nicknamed Professor. I was very, very precocious at starting from a very, very young age. I think that's taken in Eastside Park.
Yeah, it's worth noting, by the way, that all of our female cousins basically left school at 18 and got married right away. The boy cousins, and it's partially about misogyny and attitudes about women and men in the 1950s. The men were intellectual predilections were tolerated, if not honored, in ways in which the women's were not. And even though the women were often extremely smart as well, like your sister Charlotte.
Right. This is me in India. It's taken a little bit, not in the very beginning of my stay. That was my house for almost all of the 29 years. And that's my dog, Sultan. The house was about as big as you see it. It was made of mud and stones, had a tin roof. It had no toilet, no bathroom, no running water, no glass in the window. There was only that one window, but what the heck, it was home, as they say. It was very, very primitive in many ways, but more comfortable than many of the huts that many of my Indian friends lived in.
Alex, let's step back a little bit. Would you talk a little bit about how you ended up in India? So I know you went to Rutgers initially, had a particular interest in East Asian studies, and that Rutgers was less well prepared to do that. So you ended up doing much of your coursework at Princeton. And so you ended up with a career that wasn't very typical of what the Berzins, the Walkowitzes, the Lubartowskis had at all. Can you talk a little bit about how you ended up in, as it were, becoming a scholar of Buddhist studies in India?
Well, I was always interested in Asian philosophy and Asian things. Starting at age 13, I did some yoga with two friends and read what was ever available at that time, Alan Watson, Suzuki, and these sort of things. At Rutgers, since I was part of the whole Sputnik generation, we were encouraged very much to go into science. I studied chemistry for 2 years, but my heart wasn't in it. Actually, it was organic chemistry lab that did it for me, to decide that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a laboratory. I was taking an elective at Rutgers in Asian civilization, and the professor spoke about how Buddhism went from one country to another, one civilization to another, and was influenced by it. And this sort of struck a boing in me, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I want to study, this is what I want to become involved with. So they were starting a new program in critical languages at Princeton University, which was basically Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, Turkish, Persian, Russian. And my professor told us about it, and I thought, great, I'll apply, and was accepted. So the summer between sophomore and junior year, they sent me to Harvard to start Chinese language, and junior year at Princeton, which was fantastic. I asked them if I would be able to study there in my senior year as well. That was not part of the program, since there was nothing available for me at Rutgers, and they decided, well, why not? Between the junior and senior years, they sent me to Stanford to start studying classical Chinese. Then I continued at Princeton, adding Japanese. They had a program that they would, at Princeton, to send anybody to study language over the summer in an American university. So I asked them, well, could you send me to Taiwan? I would, learn much more. And they said, well, nobody asked us that before. And they decided, well, okay, they would send me there. Rutgers did not have a Oriental languages or Asian department, but they invented one and gave me my degree from that, which then became the, I don't know what it's called, but Oriental or Asian Studies department at Princeton. I went on to Harvard University for graduate school, first a doctorate, first a master's in Far Eastern languages. That was Chinese. What I was always interested in was how Buddhism went from India to China through Central Asia, and how it was affected by the civilizations, how Chinese philosophy affected the way that it was understood and the way that it affected Chinese philosophy after that. Then I thought, well, to understand the I understood the Chinese side quite well, but to understand the Indian side, I would need to study Sanskrit. So I added Sanskrit, and that led to Tibetan, because that's another example of how Buddhism went from one civilization, in this case, India, to Tibet. There was one person in my, so after the master's, then I went on to a joint Ph.D. degree between two departments, Sanskrit and Indian Studies and Far Eastern languages, which again, I think was the first. But anyway, there was somebody turned up in my class, Bob Thurman, but he was in all my classes. He was a good friend of mine and still is. And he had been the first Westerner to become a monk in the Tibetan tradition, and he only lasted like that for about a year, and had been in India, studied with the Dalai Lama. He told me about it, and I decided, well, I'd like to go to India and check that out and study like that for myself. So for my the research for my PhD dissertation, I won a Fulbright fellowship to go to India, and there I met the Dalai Lama back in 1969, and I realized that everything that I was studying was not a dead subject as it was presented at Harvard, but here it was a living tradition. Here were people who actually knew what it all meant, what, they weren't just guessing like a crossword puzzle. And I decided this is what I would like to pursue. So after a few years of working on the dissertation, Dalai Lama built a library there and invited my teacher to be the teacher there. I asked if I could help. And he said that, well, go back and hand in the dissertation, get your degree, and then come back. So I went back to Harvard, and they had set up a teaching position that I could take if I wanted at Cornell. I only had to go and apply for it, the interview, and I said, no, thank you. I'm going back to India. And they thought I was completely crazy, but in any case, I think that was a very good decision. So then I moved back to India and spent the main part of my career there for 29 years.
So I think it's extraordinarily impressive. But to me, I know what a linguist you are, Alex, and how important it is to a lot of the work you do in terms of translating and providing access to various peoples around the world. How many languages do you actually speak or feel comfortable with?
Well, that's hard to say. I know a little bit of an awful lot of languages. As I said, I studied modern Chinese, classical Chinese, Japanese, Tibetan, and Sanskrit, German, and a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of Yiddish. Over the years, I've picked up, a smattering of all the various Romance languages, so I can deal with all of them. I have gone almost every year, except since COVID and since the war, once or twice a year since 1988 to Russia, so I can read the Cyrillic alphabet, know a little bit of, some basic words in Russian. I learned the Arabic alphabet, and so I, can work with Arabic script-based languages, of course, North Indian languages, a little bit of Hindi. Languages don't faze me. Alphabets don't faze me. We have 32 languages on my website, studybuddhism.com. And, I can deal with all of them. Not that I can read them or understand them, but I can work with them. I can recognize what's going on.
So one would get the sense from this of a very cosmopolitan person, but I also know of your rather conventional background, most especially when it came to food studies and food materials. When Alex came to the house, it was pretty well known that Alex and his sister, Charlotte, peanut butter and jelly was maybe, even that was a little outre for them. You kept it as simple.
Peanut butter was too much, just jelly.
Peanut butter was too much, just jelly.
Toast had to be burned.
But I knew suddenly I remember the story of you suddenly going to India, not to India, to Japan, I think the first time, and having to encounter some rather strange foods. So it seems to me one of the remarkable pieces in this whole story is the ways in which you were also quite transformed as a kind of cosmopolitan person, even becoming a little more willing to try other foods. Yes?
Well, absolutely. I can't say that I can eat everything. I still don't like smelly French cheeses, but or pickles or stuff like that. But Indian food, I adore.
Okay, let's go back now to the slideshow so we have time to move on with David's stuff. Patricia will advance the slides now.
I started, here I am, one of the earliest days of translating for the Dalai Lama. When I studied Tibetan at Harvard, it was only studied as a written language. My professor was Japanese. He did not have any clue as to how Tibetan was pronounced or the spoken language. And there were no decent textbooks. The only textbook for Tibetan was modeled after Latin grammar, so which is totally not fitting. So, oh yeah, I studied Latin as well. So he taught it to us in terms of Japanese grammar, which made a lot more sense. But when I went to India, I didn't know the spoken language. I was almost immediately, I was able to live with a Tibetan monk who did not know English, but we communicated through written Tibetan. And by living with him and starting to study the spoken language, I managed to learn. I had to basically figure out the sound system and everything like an anthropologist going to Borneo with an unstudied language. So that was challenging and actually a lot of fun. But once I learned the spoken language and was studying with one of the Dalai Lama's teachers, then I started to translate for the Dalai Lama. So this must be, oh, I don't know, maybe around 1974 or something like that. Here,
Alex is in the middle of this photograph and back against the wall.
Yeah, with my face. The Dalai Lama is facing the group of young Western monks on the right, and I'm on the left translating for him.
Okay, great. Let's move on.
This was my main teacher, Serkung Rinpoche, who was one of the teachers of the Dalai Lama. And here he's explaining something to me in a text. And if you look at his face, particularly his forehead and ears and nose, actually he was the model for the face of Yoda. Spielberg, I think it was Spielberg, I'm not quite sure. I wasn't present at the time, came to Dharamsala and was struck by his face.
Great story. Onward. Next slide.
Here I am with him meeting the Pope, Pope John Paul the
second.
Second, that's right, the second. We were there arranging, this was very early in his papacy, 1980, and we were arranging with him for the first meeting that he would have with the Dalai Lama. And I was the translator there in the Vatican.
Next slide.
This is the conference that was held of the world Jewish leaders with the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala. This is in his general audience room where he would meet with various groups and people. And I was taking notes. This took place in 1990. And as I did in many occasions, I wrote down everything that was going on so that we would have, besides a recording an actual written record, because sometimes tape recorders fail.
So this meeting is the basis really for the book, is it not, Alex? The Jews in the Lotus, which describes how these
This
rabbis.
is the basis of that meeting. And one of the things I mentioned in the thing that I wrote was he's not here in this photo. He must be sitting on the other side of the room. Rabbi Zalman Schachter, I became a bit friendly with, and he said, you know, in the past, all various Oriental rulers had a court Jew. And I think that's the position that you have. You're the Dalai Lama's court Jew. That actually made me feel quite good.
So anyone who wants to read about this, The Jews in the Lotus, Alex figures quite prominently in that book, and you can hear more about that whole set of those meetings.
One of the things that was very interesting about this meeting was the Dalai Lama asked them, how is it possible that the Jewish people were able to retain their culture and religion over thousands of years without a homeland? Because as many of you might know, the Chinese communists invaded Tibet, annexed it to China, and the Dalai Lama and about 100,000 Tibetans are refugees in India. So they don't have their homeland, and even in their homeland, they're not allowed freely to practice their religion. And the Jewish leaders told him the secret was that the culture and the customs, religion, and everything were maintained in the family. It was the family's responsibility to pass on all the cultural and religious values. So this he found very, very helpful.
Alex, I seem to recall you had a manservant who made Jewish food for you.
No, not Jewish food. I wouldn't call him a manservant. I lived with a Tibetan monk, and the Tibetan monk cooked. I mean, the way that my kitchen was basically, we had to collect water in buckets, which was only available twice a day for a half hour in the morning, a half hour in the evening. And as I used to say, you could pee faster into the bucket than the water came. And so there was a bucket on some rocks, with a slate thing that the bucket stood on. It had a faucet. We cooked on a kerosene stove, which was on the floor. And it was a bit too much for me to be able to cook. So he cooked. And the Tibetans have a version of, what is it called? Kreplach. Yeah, that was similar to Jewish food.
Right. All right. Why don't you tell us about this picture now?
The Dalai Lama on several occasions would give me what I would call a mission impossible to do. And one of these mission impossibles was to find him a West African Sufi leader and bring him to Dharamsala. Dalai Lama seemed to have this intuitive understanding of what would be possible for me to do, because even though to me these tasks seemed utterly impossible, like, why don't you go and lecture in the universities in Beijing? Somehow it worked out. And so this leader here, name doesn't come to me immediately, Diallo. He is the Sufi leader of the West African country of Guinea. And miraculously, it fell in place. I was able to make contact with him. He was coming to India anyway, and I brought him up. And this is during the audience that he had with the Dalai Lama. They basically were talking about, he wanted to know what the Sufi practices for developing love and compassion were. And so they shared their methods for developing compassion.
Next slide. Thank you. Patricia, there we are. Thank you.
Right. This is in a yurt in Mongolia. Another large project that the Dalai Lama had me be the liaison and coordinator for, was treating the Chernobyl victims in the Soviet Union with Tibetan medicine. We were requested by the Ministry of Health of the Soviet Union, and I coordinated the project. It lasted for a couple of years. One of the trials that we did in Moscow were extremely successful. The person sitting next to me with the bald head was the personal doctor of the Dalai Lama. And the project involved, there were so many people, victims that were affected by this terrible disaster, that we certainly didn't have enough doctors or medicines in India. Herbal medicines are used in Tibetan medicine to treat them. So we had to plan a medical college in Moscow and a factory for producing the medicines. And we went on expeditions to try to find alternative sources of the herbs that were used. And one of the places was Mongolia, where the Mongolian tradition followed the Tibetan tradition of medicine. So here we're on an expedition, and in a yurt out on the plateau, in the grasslands, and this was refreshments, fermented horse milk. That's the most popular drink in Mongolia.
Okay. I do remember when my father was dying of cancer, Alex had some huge Tibetan medicine pills sent for my father. They didn't manage to prevent the cancer, but it was greatly appreciated by all of us at the time. Next.
Well, they don't cure cancer, but they sort of helped with the symptoms.
So, Alex, do you remember this?
Frankly, no.
Well, this is you and me in Amshinov before the cemetery.
That's you. My goodness, I didn't recognize you under the hat.
That's the two of us. This would have been in 2011, 11 years ago. We were in Amshinov at the beginning of my research for the book I did on our family history and the problems of heritage tourism generally. And we were in Amshinov. The cemetery, you may recall, was across from the rest of town. There was like a big highway cutting it off from the rest. And
yes, I do.
Anyway, there we are. So I just, next slide. This is a contemporary Alex, more contemporary.
Well, more contemporary. I think it's 2004. This is in Washington, D.C., in one of the synagogues there. The Dalai Lama was giving a large teaching on a topic that I was considered sort of, like one of the big experts on. And so I was delivering the lectures to actually a huge number of people at the synagogue, explaining what the teachings were about and preparing them for them. And after the teachings, then a very large line of people came up to me. I had written the main book that people were using on the topic, and were having me autograph it.
Okay, and we have one final slide. It's Alex's message to the rest of us.
Oh, I didn't expect you to show that.
There you are. We thought it was a wonderful picture, Alex. Alex is now in Berlin.
Now I'm 77, but one of the things that I absolutely adore here is CrossFit. And I have been working with a personal trainer 3 times a week for over 10 years. And here I am.
Thank you, Alex. All right. Well, with that, we're going to turn it over to David. And we'll start with the slideshow for David, and we'll allow you to begin to do a kind of similar explication of the images and what we're seeing as a point of entree into your life. All right. Patricia?
Well, this is a connection with Alex. the guy on the left is Shep Gordon, my mentor, and Alice Cooper's manager, who had a very close relationship with the Dalai Lama, and actually is a Buddhist himself now. Shep, Alice lovingly refers to Shep as his Jewish Buddhist manager. He still manages Alice these days, and I'd be curious to know if Alex ever crossed paths with Shep Gordon and his in his adventures. And
No, I never did.
Shep, I think is I don't have the information in front of me, but he is on the board of the Tibetan Fund. He brought the Dalai Lama to the University of Buffalo for an event, which is Shep's alma mater, and brought him to Hawaii as well. And the other thing that Shep does is that he, besides managing rock and roll bands like Alice Cooper, manages famous chefs like Wolfgang Puck, and on many occasions when he was with the Dalai Lama, would cook for His Holiness. So I thought that'd be an interesting connection with Alex and myself.
It is indeed. So now we'll begin with, I'll just put in a plug just before we proceed, just to let you know, yet another connection in terms of our families is my sister, Karen Zellermeyer, and her daughter have just produced a podcast series that the Tribeca Film Festival has given special mention to, which is about the role of music, marijuana, and magic in hippie life in the 1970s, West Virginia. And so it also has a kind of overlap with your life. And again, she's another Paterson girl. So all these kind of overlaps in our family. So now we'll begin with the rest of your story. Here we go.
Boy, did I look like a dork at age 15. I don't know what else to say about that picture, but yeah, that's me at 15.
Handsome dude.
I recognize you now. I recognize that picture. I must have met you at high school.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, 15, I was attending East Side High, and like I say, hanging out at the Cozy right after school and seeing what kind of trouble I could get into.
Were you one year ahead of Alex, or 2 years? You're 78, as I recall.
61.
Let's see. I think I actually, I went back to East Side after going to a private school for a couple of years. Went back to East Side for my last year. I might have graduated. I'm not sure the year. I think it was.
It would have been 61 also, because I graduated in 60, and I'm a year older than you.
Okay, yeah, I'm 79.
I think I don't think we were in the same classes, but I absolutely recognize that picture.
Great, there we are.
Yep. No idea that we were cousins.
Here are the happenings. Tell us how. Tell us about.
This was actually a photograph on the back of an album that we had. These are all Italian boys. I was the only Jew in the band. So I told them they're lucky that they had a Jew in the band, because they needed a sex symbol as part of the.
So could you identify these guys for us?
Yes, that's me with all the hair. God, I miss that hair. That's me on the left. Bernie Laporta.
Lying down.
Yes, that's me lying down. Bernie Laporta. Standing up is Tommy Giuliano. With the sitting down with the headband is Bobby Miranda, who, by the way, still is the last remaining Happenings member that actually still performs as the Happenings. He still performs with a band as the Happenings. And then the guy on the on the right with the mustache is Mike Leneve, who was our drummer.
Very recognizable from that era. This would be around late 1960s.
Yes, exactly.
Uh-huh. And why don't you tell people again some of the records that were such box office successes from the Happenings?
Well, the Happenings themselves had 2 gold records. The first one was "See You in September," which was by far our biggest hit.
Which I think everyone knows still.
Yeah, and it was that was the summer of '66, and then our next hit record was a revision of the old song "Go Away, Little Girl" that Steve Lawrence had the original hit with. And whenever he did his annual muscular dystrophy telethon, he would have the Happenings come on the show and he would sing that song along with us. The next record that was a hit was by far my favorite hit record we had, "I Got Rhythm," an old George Gershwin song,
Sure.
Believe it or not. And I thought that was the best record we ever made. And that was a huge hit as well. And then the hit after that was "My Mammy," which was actually an old Al Jolson hit from decades earlier.
Now you leave the Happenings at a certain point. Why don't you just to provide a transition to the next images, explain how it is that you came to leave them and become something, not so much a musician yourself, but a manager of musicians.
Well, early in the career of the Happenings, we got rid of our actual manager. We just felt that it just wasn't efficient enough to take our career to the next stage. So we managed ourselves, but I basically did all the work. I had the relationship with the agency and the record company. And so I really learned what management was all about. And it got to a point where we stopped having hit records, and I wanted to change the band. We were sort of this syrupy pop band, and what we really did very, very well was harmonizing. I wanted to apply these harmony techniques to more contemporary type of music, and this didn't sit well with the Happenings at all. And at that point, I decided to leave the Happenings. I guess I felt, hey, I couldn't be a Happening forever, but I could manage other bands, and there might be a future in that for me. And like I say, I was pretty sure I couldn't be a Happening forever.
And so tell us about this photograph where we see some of the first gold records there behind you, and see.
I decided, I went through some transitions and ended up opening up a booking agency. And this was my office, and I represented Boosie's Rubber Band, George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. I'm not sure you guys know who they are, but if you were black, you would be doing cartwheels at the very mention of the name of Parliament Funkadelic or Boosie's Rubber Band. But I also was a booking agent for the Runaways, which was an all-girl band, which members was Joan Jett, who has a very successful solo career on her own today. Lita Ford, same thing. And I also was a booking agent for the Dead Boys, which was a very extreme rock punk band from New York. That was quite an adventure.
Okay, let's move forward. Next slide.
That's me, a recent photo of me with Alice Cooper backstage at one of his show, and his comment was when I went back to the stage, he goes, "Hey, Libert, we lived," looking back on all the insanity, the decades that we had spent together that had passed. And so I was his tour manager, which is how I became friends with Shep Gordon. He was Alice Cooper's manager. I was Alice's tour manager for his most formidable years, like 1972 through 1975, before I left the Alice Cooper organization and went out on my own. This is me and Alice.
What year is this photo, do you think?
Probably around 2000, 2001. I'm not really sure.
You by this point, you had developed the Lubartowski forehead.
Yes, getting there, that's for sure.
Right.
And managing acts like George Clinton, Parliament Funkadelic didn't help matters either. And it's pretty hard to maintain your hairline when you manage crazy acts like that.
Next, we'll go through and see some of the acts.
There's George Clinton in his art studio in Laguna Beach.
Oh, I once lived in Laguna Beach for a year on the water. Loved it.
So did George. It was, George, his paintings are very valuable today.
Yeah. Next.
That's my good friend, David Keith. He's an actor. You may recall he was in An Officer and a Gentleman and Brubaker. And he actually, there's a quote on the inside album sleeve where he said, "From managing rock stars to fixing my plumbing, Libert's life has been one of the wildest rides in entertainment history."
Next one, all of which are described in luscious detail in the book, I will remind people. Tell us about this.
This is Prince and Sheila E. I became Sheila E.'s manager during Prince's most formidable years. So I found myself on tour with Prince and Sheila. Quite an experience, and I chronicled a bit of that in my book as well.
Right. So I think everybody knows Prince, but may know Sheila E. less well.
That's true. But Prince was her producer, and she had a huge hit called "The Glamorous Life." Right. It was just a huge hit, and I like Prince. He was an interesting guy, unusual guy, and he could be brutal with people, but he was very nice to me. That might have something to do with the fact that I was older than most of the people in his inner circle, and he knew of my history with George Clinton, who Prince really idolized. So we got along well.
So Phil referenced the ups and downs of the industry, of course. What he didn't reference, of course, was that the industry, like I suggested with my sister's podcast, often mixed music with some drugs, recreational drugs, and sometimes some harder drugs. So people will learn near the end of the story that David actually spent some time in prison. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you ended up this way and how you got through it?
Sure. That's me with one of my homies in the yard. I like a contentious thing, but that was when I was managing, was my major source of income. And when we parted ways, I found myself with a greatly diminished income, but still a high overhead. Seemed like just a terrific idea to start selling cocaine. everybody seemed to do it, seemed harmless enough at the time. I keep my circles small so that I wouldn't get in trouble, but obviously it didn't work out that way. And I spent altogether 14 months of my life incarcerated. So I guess it deserves a chapter in my book. And
It's
so
actually quite a gripping chapter
couldn't,
because you actually encountered some pretty tough guys in there and managed to get yourself into a better place by being tough yourself.
well, what I learned in prison, and I actually learned it before I went there, even that, tough guys prey on the weak ones. So it's better off standing up to them, even if it means you're going to get the crap beat out of you, because then the word will get out that you're willing to fight. And if you're willing to fight, they're going to think twice about getting into it with you, because you'll end up in the solitary, which is not a very pleasant thing. So as long as you're willing to fight, as long as you didn't give anybody a reason to want to get into a fight with you, they pretty much would leave you alone.
So you got through prison and have remade your life, which is at least reflected in the last of the images that we have.
Those are my children, Trundle, Barney, and Harold. Yes. And I pretty much retired from the music business. I live in the high desert in Yucca Valley, about 120 miles east of LA. And I say semi-retired because I'm still inundated with the requests from people wanting me to produce them or manage them. I turn pretty much everything down, unless it sounds like it might be fun or I can make a little bit of money in the process. But I pretty much in my retirement have become an animal rights activist, and it seems to fit in well with my life of leisure at this point. And those are my babies, and they give so much meaning to my life. And so I'm happy you showed that picture of them.
Thank you. Well, there we have it, guys. Two Paterson boys who ended up taking very different paths to their lives, but nonetheless leading extraordinarily creative, productive, and successful careers. So I thought this would be a good time to kind of open it up to the rest of you to ask whatever questions this has raised for you of our two cousins. So the floor is open to everybody else. You can either post a question or you can just simply raise it.
I have a question for David.
Please go for it, Cliff.
Well, first of all, David, I have been an Alice Cooper fan ever since I heard School's Out, and I was hooked by the song. I was hooked by the experience that is Alice Cooper. What I want to know is, you've known him for a long time, so you must have experienced watching Vince turn into Alice and then reinvent himself back to Vince again. What was that like, seeing that experience happen?
I became Alice's tour manager just at the point where he was just about to become the huge superstar that he was. And the thing that I love about Alice is there are no airs about him. He never took himself seriously.
Right.
He took what he did seriously, but he just wanted to be one of the guys. He wanted people to like him, and his fame, he never became a prima donna, really. He just, he wanted people to like him, which is an unusual trait with somebody so famous. And, he'd be happy hanging out with one of the roadies as much as he would be hanging out with Mick Jagger. He was that kind of guy. And I watched him evolve. He had his ups and downs as well. And he regained his fame and personality. He had a rough period himself there. And he's been actually sober for about 40 years now, with all the drinking that he used to do. That's far behind him.
Quite the
He's been
skilled
married.
golfer too.
What's that?
Quite the skilled golfer, I understand as well.
He is. He's a very good golfer. He plays any chance he gets. When I was a store manager, I used to arrange when he had a day off. I used to figure out on that day off where we could fly in or stay where we were, so that he could get in a round or two of golf. That was always sort of put into the itinerary. But yeah, he loves to play golf, and he's a grandfather. He's been married to the same woman for over 40 years. He's he doesn't bite the heads off of chicken or bludgeon puppies to death. He's as normal a guy, certainly more normal than I am. He's a really terrific guy as well.
So I have a couple of questions for both of you. The first is, what would you think of as the highlight of your careers? What do you hold most dear to you as in memory as the most riveting moment in your careers? And do you have any regrets about something you would have liked to have done differently? David, play more music yourself, or Alex, live in other countries? I don't know what the answer might be. Alex, David?
Well, I guess the highlight, the biggest moment in my career might be Woodstock 99. George is playing in front of 180,000 people. And I arranged for Bootsy Collins, who you white guys probably don't know, to do a walk-on. And that might have been the highlight of my professional career as not as a musician, but somebody in the music business. It doesn't get any bigger than that. And I talk about that in the prologue to my book, because it was such a momentous moment. And the other part of it, do I miss not being a performer? No, I don't. I'm glad that is behind me. Over the years, even after I stopped touring, I would still find myself in the studio, either producing other bands and sometimes playing on their recording sessions. I certainly did a lot of background singing on Alice Cooper albums, because I found myself there in the studio all the time. And so I never really left the musical aspect of music completely, but I was very happy not to have to be a musician on tour. That's for sure.
Alex?
Well, it's really hard to identify a highlight in my life, because there have been so many. Translating for the Dalai Lama, every time that I did that, whether it was for very large crowds of thousands or 100,000 people, or translating for him with meeting various presidents when I went, accompanied him on various tours, meeting various religious leaders to set up meetings with the Dalai Lama, the Pope, the head of the Orthodox Church, the head of the Zulu religion, for that matter, etc. But now I'm not retired. I am very much involved with an online educational program, studybuddhism.com, with all the social media and all of that sort of stuff. We reach millions of people. It's become really huge. But I suppose what really touched me very much when they showed that picture of me signing books at this event in the synagogue in Washington, there were I think the synagogue only held about 1,000 people, but there were thousands more online waiting to get in. And when I went on, in front on this little stage to give my talk, they gave me a standing ovation. And I think that was very, very touching to show that people really appreciated the work that I've done to preserve and make available in the many, many languages of the world the incredible wisdom that's held in the Tibetan tradition. As for regrets, actually, I really don't regret anything of my life. My life has been absolutely unbelievable, extraordinary, all the opportunities that I've had, which have just basically fallen in my lap, without even trying very hard, for them to happen. So I've been very, very satisfied with my life. It's been wonderful, fantastic ride. I just hope that it lasts long enough to be able to get, at least most of the stuff that are in my archives and my computer online and available to the world.
So one of the things that's striking to me, I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, is that at this point, when we talk about the history of Jews, we often talk about the strong role of family within the Jewish tradition. But you both are largely single guys. And so I'm kind of wondering where family plays in your life, or does it have a role? I mean, you're part of a different way of thinking about family, obviously. I can think obviously about the connections that you all have and the big support networks. But do you feel that the all-consuming role that it is to become a manager of these high-profile guys, or to be involved in all the important work that you're doing, Alex, with the Buddhist community around the world, does it come with any sacrifices in terms of other things that contacts you would have liked to have had in your world? There are always sacrifices, choices we all make. Does family play a role any longer in your lives? And what role does it play? David?
Looking back, I suppose the lifestyle that I was leading just was not very conducive to a long-term relationship. And I did get married for briefly, maybe 30, maybe 40 years ago. Yeah, at least 40 years ago. It didn't end well.
But you do talk a lot about women. You do talk about your love of women a lot in your book.
Well, I talk about it somewhat, but I didn't want the book to be this salacious tell-all, sex thing. I really didn't want the book to be. So yeah, I touched on it a little bit, but I didn't want that to really be the basis of the book. So I think in that respect, I did succeed. There's some of it in there, and I guess it's part of rock and roll. But do I have any regret? Listen, I've been with the same girl now for the past 23 years. I can't get her to come on camera with me here, but we have a happy, wonderful life now. So I'm not alone. I somehow or other miraculously, I ended up with Angie, the love of my life, and maybe I'm lucky. I don't know, but I certainly don't have any complaints with all the ups and downs in my life, how things turned out.
No, thank you for reminding us. I mean, we tend to focus so much on all your other achievements, but to have maintained a productive and loving relationship for 23 years is also an important part of your story. Thank you. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's the same situation. My lifestyle was not conducive at all to having a full-time wife and raising children. I was traveling all over the world. I lectured in over 70 countries and did all these international projects and so on for the Dalai Lama. But what has worked in my life is a part-time partner with Catherine. It's been going on now for 46 years. So she is a Swiss psychiatrist. She has homes both in the United States and in Switzerland, and does a tremendous amount of international lecturing on family therapy and contextual therapy. And throughout all these years, we meet in various places of the world and spend a few weeks together. In fact, we just were in Corsica for 2 weeks, enjoying a wonderful.
I was guessing that's where you were.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
And why you were. So I just didn't want these stories to be just about all your work lives, because I know Alex's relationship with Catherine, and I had read a little bit about Angela also in David's book, and I just wanted people to hear the kind of fuller picture of your lives, or also include these other people in your lives that have been there. Of course, now you're all part of the Lubartowski family of over almost over 1,000 folks, and maybe soon to be 2,000 folks if Cliff has his way and can make the connection.
Well, I haven't had children of my own, but I have many. I don't spend much time, in fact, at all with people my own age. I'm always with people who are much, much younger than I am. And for many of them, I'm a father figure. They confide in me. They come to me for advice and so on. And this very much satisfies the paternal instinct in me.
We've gone on for about an hour and a half, and let me open up again and see if there are any additional questions. Paul, you have something you want to ask?
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments about Alex.
Yeah.
I believe, Alex, that I attended your bar mitzvah.
Really?
There were not many, I will tell you, there were not many bar mitzvahs in Paterson, because, to put it bluntly, they were very anti-religious group. But I remember your bar mitzvah, and all I can say about it, Alex, is it's been all downhill for you since then. The other thought I had was I was very attentive to the condo, the really nice condo you were living in for 29 years in Dharamsala.
I wouldn't call it a condo.
He's being facetious.
The one with no indoor plumbing, and you had to go outside. I was just wondering, is that available perhaps? Is that on the
Actually,
market?
it fell down.
It fell down?
Yes, when I left in 1968, actually. After that, nobody lived in it, and eventually part of it fell down. Last time I went back to Dharamsala, I saw that.
Yeah, so when it fell down, I guess it was an improvement.
I don't know. Not the whole thing, just one of the walls.
Okay.
So anybody else have a last question they want to ask before we let these people go have a stiff drink?
Had a question.
Who?
Benjamin.
Benjamin? Unmute yourself, Benjamin.
Peggy has a question after that as well.
Great. Benjamin, you have to unmute.
I have a question for Alex.
Okay, Peggy, yes.
Do you remember do you remember your trips to Montreal? And your visit?
Sharing a Passover. In fact, that's the last Passover I attended, a Passover Seder.
And you had to eat matzah?
Pardon?
And you had to eat matzah with dinner?
Well, it was wonderful.
And the cheese the bagels and lox when you came to that.
Montreal has some of the best bagels of anywhere.
I just wanted to know if you remember those trips.
Oh, absolutely. Very fondly.
Alexander, you look, this is Dr. Benjamin Wolstein. You look very familiar to me because you look like my cousin Raquel that was present from Uruguay. If you look at her, you and her could be cousins or sister and brother.
Well, we're the one big family.
That's correct. She is a psychologist and she is a writer,
A novelist.
novelist, and also produced theater plays and so on in Uruguay.
Wonderful, wonderful. I visited Uruguay once, but only briefly. Gave some lectures in Montevideo.
Yeah, I lived in Montevideo 28 years.
Yeah, beautiful city.
Yes, yes, yes.
Sharon, you had a question?
I just want to comment. I happened to see Alice Cooper was playing with his band Hollywood Vampires, which is with Johnny Depp and is it Steven, not Steven Tyler, the guy from Aerosmith. Anyway, he was playing in Italy and we were going to go see them, but they were charging so much. So what happened is they did big screens. So all these people sort of crammed into the bushes and you could see the screens. And I was amazed how well his voice has held up. He really, through all these years, I mean, that was probably about 5 years ago. His voice was amazingly good. The band was really good. So I think that was fun for him to have a different outlet.
The Hollywood, as a matter of fact, the last time I saw Alice perform was with the Hollywood Vampires with Joe Perry from Aerosmith and Johnny Depp and oh no, actually the last time I saw Alice perform was at the Greek Theater a few months ago, and yeah, his band is fabulous. He hasn't lost a step. He's as good as ever. It was just a phenomenal show. It was very enjoyable. Yeah, he's great.
All right, I think that will bring this to a conclusion with our thanks to both David and Alex.
Thank you, Danny.
And in your amazing lives, Alex.
Wonderful.
I feel humbled.
Hope to be out to California one day, David, to meet you and reconnect our Paterson ties. Alex,
I would look
forward to spending more time with you in Berlin or come back to New York. You may know that my daughter is now the Dean of Humanities at Rutgers, so they would now have a curriculum you could probably enroll in.
Mazel tov.
Would you send us your addresses so we can connect your emails, please?
Paul can send you. We'll send out a group email and highlight the addresses, the email addresses for both David and Alex for people who want to make contact. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
I'd just like to say how joyous this gathering is, as they all have been. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of you during the next one, which we have not yet specified, but we're certainly going to continue and
thank you.
carry on this new family tradition.
Okay.
And thank you,
I
Jan.
think there are many more people in the family that have interesting stories.
Oh, we have many more for sure.
There's plenty of stories. Plenty of stories.
Alex, go online to listen to Karen's podcast. It's called We Were Never There.
So look at my website, studybuddhism.com.
Indeed.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.